Okay, it looks like we have a good group, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. I'm April Harrington. I'm the project manager of the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. Thank you all for joining our June quarterly meeting this morning. For those who might be newer to our group, we are an employer-led sector partnership. So we have 12 of the major health and hospital systems at the table. 6 of those also sit at the steering committee. And we're supported by more than a dozen strategic partners, including trading providers and community organizations, a number of which I can see have joined us today. Our mission is to unite employers and industry partners to support a more inclusive healthcare workforce. And we do that by focusing on local and targeted hiring, focusing on areas with higher concentration of unemployment. We also work on building our relationships with the education and training providers. And we also focus on retention and career pathways so that we're not just focusing on bringing in a pipeline of entry-level workers into healthcare, but that we're also providing upward pathways and steering people into good jobs, family-sustaining careers, and family wealth-building careers. This is our agenda today. We'll start off with some CHWC updates. I just have a brief update from the Youth Pathways Committee, and then we'll talk about the Good Jobs Challenge grant. We do not know yet whether we've been awarded that grant, but I'd like to get started on the planning for those funds. So I'll walk you through the process that we've put together for that. And then I'll turn it over to Ellen Frank Miller from Work, who's our consultant on the career pathway mapping project. And we'll hear an update and some preliminary data from that project. Then we'll move into some presentations and discussions. We'll hear about an upcoming opportunity to join a second chance hiring cohort. That's hosted by Corporate Coalition and the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance, and allows employers to take a look at their policies around hiring people with backgrounds and to forward some strategies to be more welcoming to that population. Then we'll hear about the Bridge Initiative, which is a joint initiative between Sinai, Chicago, Advocate Aurora, and UChicago Medicine, funded by JP Chase, which has 3 different workforce tracks. And so we'll get to know those programs a little bit better. And then I'm excited that we have a couple folks from the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services to talk about a large $180 million investment into the healthcare workforce through the state budget in this next fiscal year. So we'll have a discussion there and allow you as employers to give some feedback into what investments might be the most impactful. And then at the very end, we'll leave some time for community announcements if there's anything you'd like to share with the group. Okay, just a brief update on our Youth Pathways Committee. As many of you know, we launched a Youth Pathways Directory, which is a searchable directory that lives on the CHWC website. It includes programs primarily for high school aged youth and college youth, although it also does have space for programs for middle school aged youth and youth who are out of school. We currently have 21 programs live in that directory, and we're always working to update that and to get it out in front of more students. Please let me know if you have any programs that you'd like to get in that directory. It's very easy to join. We've also decided to host another one of our college opportunity showcases this year. We did that last year in December on a virtual platform called Whova. It included an exhibitor hall of our employers where they were able to feature their internship and other programs for college-age youth, as well as panel discussions on diverse career pathways, networking opportunities, and professional development opportunities. So right now we're looking at tentatively a November date for that this year. We're also still strategizing on how to build more programs for high school youth. We're just making sure we are not duplicating existing efforts and working alongside CPS to make sure that we're doing something that's impactful. We're also using those committee meetings to just share resources and best practices. That's mainly what we're focusing on over the summer. We just talked about the challenge of building internal buy-in, of getting departments on board to host interns and recruiting mentors. And then we're also going to have a conversation about program evaluation. So I encourage anyone on this call who is engaged with youth career awareness programs or internships, apprenticeships, if you'd like to join that committee, let me know. You're most welcome. The Good Jobs Challenge grants. So many of you know that we've applied for this, and Kylan Fisher presented on it at our last quarterly meeting. This is a large grant opportunity from the Economic Development Administration. We are one applicant on a larger application where the lead is the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. It focuses on 4 different sectors, so healthcare is one of 4. If we are awarded a grant, it will be between 5 and 25 million over 3 years. Again, that will be split over our 4 sectors. We should know about this in July. We don't have a hard deadline, and we've heard the term summer, as one will know. I believe they have to start expending the funds in September, so I think we should know by August at the latest. What this will provide for CHWC is more capacity and staff support, and then direct funding for pathway programs. So most of these dollars will be direct training dollars that are funneled through the partnership. This particular grant opportunity asks us to focus on those family sustaining careers, on bringing people up through an upward career trajectory. So not just pipeline work, although it can include pipeline work, but really bringing people into higher paid careers. So I've been working with the steering committee to devise a plan for our planning phase. And this is what it looks like. First, we recognize that there are so many pathway programs that you are all currently operating or have run in the past. We want to make sure that we capture all of those successes and all of those learnings, and that we're able to replicate things that work and learn from things that have been challenging. So what we're going to start with is a landscape scan. I'm going to be sending out a couple of surveys, one aimed at employers and one for training providers. And I'll start circulating those next week to individual institutions. And the goal of those surveys is to create sort of an inventory of pathway programs and training programs in Chicagoland, and to look at them side by side. So look at similar data so we can pinpoint where there's a really high return on investment and a model that's working really well. And we can also pinpoint where there might be gaps. I'm also working on putting together 1 or 2 learning events. I'd hope to announce those today, but I'm still working on solidifying some presenters. These will focus on incumbent worker pathway programs and progressive pathway programs. I hope to do one that focuses solely on nursing progressive pathways, and then perhaps another one that looks at incumbent worker training programs more broadly. So look out for those over the next coming weeks. I'll be announcing those soon. So that will be over the course of the summer. And then at the end of the summer, early fall, after we've gathered that data and I've been able to compile it, I first would like to convene an HR senior leader from each of our 12 participating hospitals to look at this landscape scan with me, and to drill down and identify a few occupations and pathway models that we think we'd like to pursue with this funding. So we'll start with a senior leader meeting, and then that will move into the September 13th quarterly meeting, where we'll bring that discussion to the entire group. And out of those 2 meetings, we should be able to identify some occupations and some models to pursue, and then we'll move into the nitty gritty. So that will either be an in-person retreat or a series of meetings. I just think it would be nice at this stage to get together in person and to start meeting each other again in person every now and again, and to get some of that energy that we get from being in the same room. I will pause there. Any questions or suggestions on this plan? Let's check the chat. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm excited about this. You'll be hearing more about it soon. And now, before I pass it off to Ellen, I'll just a brief reminder on this career pathway mapping project and what it is. This project seeks to investigate our current existing pathways from frontline patient-facing positions. So we've chosen 3 particular positions that includes medical assistants, certified nursing assistants, and patient service representatives. We're looking at how often are folks in those positions really moving up in the ladder, and when they are, where are they moving? What is enabling them to move? What are their barriers to movement? So we're doing some investigating, some research, and compiling those that research and those recommendations. At the end of the day, we do hope to compile some career pathway maps that perhaps can live in the pathway builder in careerpathways.net, but also in other resources that allows job seekers and current employees to understand their opportunities to advance from these roles. And we have 5 of our systems participating. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ellen to continue giving us an update on that program. And Ellen, I need to allow you to share your screen. You should be able to now.
All righty, let's see how technology is treating me this morning. Excellent, there we go. Terrific. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to share where we are so far. And what I'll do is just start here with a sort of quick reminder of what it is that we're up to here. So we are looking at the question of to what extent are entry-level clinical workers moving into careers in healthcare that offer a wealth building wage. So looking at trajectories and what's happening today so that we can develop opportunities to improve. So one update that we have is that we have now selected the 3rd job category that we will be investigating, which is patient service representatives, called a wide range of things at the 5 hospital systems that are involved in the project. But so having locked that down, we are now at the stage here where we are gathering the employer perspective on career pathways. So we've been collecting administrative data and beginning some leadership interviews, both with senior leadership as well as HR leadership, to kind of get the lay of the land of where things are today. Currently, we have administrative data from 3 of the 5 and some partial data from a 4th. So we're making some progress there, and we've begun conducting the interviews as well. So that progress is rolling along. This is the original set of milestones that we have. You can see here in June that we are a little bit behind schedule. We're still working on the April-May stuff, but I think we're going to have an opportunity to catch up in June, as we are now at the stage where we're starting to seek out which frontline supervisors at each hospital system are the right folks for us to talk to. And specifically, we're trying to find folks who have direct experience supervising CNAs, medical assistants, or patient services representatives, so that they can give us their sort of on the ground lived experience about what advancement looks like for each of those groups, and trying to identify who the right folks are. It's going to be a little bit of a walking through a labyrinth phase, but we're going to be talking to 2 supervisors for each of the 3 positions at each of the 5 hospital systems. So we're very excited to be moving towards that next step. This is some very early preliminary data. It is not complete from all hospital systems, but I thought that we would share some of it briefly, just to give you a feel, with, of course, the researcher caveat that please don't hang your hat. These numbers are likely to change when we complete the data collection. And there are just a couple of things that I wanted to point out. I know you're perusing these numbers, but let me just show you some things that caught my eye. So first of all, the average wages here, as you can see, don't have an enormous spread. Now, when we say average, of course, we don't know if there are any outliers, folks who may have been here a very long time, tons of new hires that are skewing things low, but given what we see, there aren't dramatic differences. And as we all know, the requirements or the certifications that are required for each of these jobs are quite different. So to become a certified nursing assistant is a pretty compact time to start and then finish. And then to become a medical assistant, the certification process is much more involved. It includes a lot of classes, et cetera. But you can see here the wage difference is a little under $3 an hour on average. So there's definitely more required of a medical assistant. And as we're beginning to learn, there are many more activities a medical assistant can be part of as opposed to a CNA. But the wage premium that we might have expected is not as substantial. And then when we look at the patient service representatives, who, as you all probably know, don't require any particular certification, although they do require some kinds of work experience and generally a high school degree or GED. Again, we're seeing a similar level of average wages at this time. This is another thing that caught my eye. The hospital systems have very different models in terms of whether they hire full-time or part-time CNAs, a combination thereof, how much they emphasize CNA roles as opposed to medical assistants. There are some that really rarely hire CNAs and really focus in on medical assistants. But you can see here, there's an interesting pattern where the CNAs, which have by far the most folks in part-time roles, also have the highest voluntary turnover rate. And that's by a pretty good margin. We know from research in retail that part-time positions are associated with much higher turnover than full-time positions. It's difficult to say what may be behind that. Again, preliminary data, those numbers could shift. But this was another data point that stood out to me and that caught my attention. So much more to come on all of these fronts as we progress through, and looking forward to the exciting stuff we'll have to share at our next update. But just again, to revisit a few other things, what we've heard in interviews, again, what extent are people moving into careers that offer a wealth building wage? Well, we can't manage what we don't measure, but these data are pretty tricky to come by. You have to be able to track an individual person from the time they enter the organization to any time they move jobs, even if it might be in different areas that don't necessarily have systems that interface as well as you might expect. So the sort of the highest level of, are they moving into wealth building wages? Well, people have a sense of it, but the data to support that are just really difficult to come by, and in some cases just not available. But the good news is that there are efforts underway to improve data collection and management. And I think this is a really pivotal effort, because if we're able to track that information, we actually wouldn't be asking this research question in the first place. So I think that's the destination that we want to get to, in addition to the destination of moving these folks into these better jobs. So a destination is, we want to be able to answer this question right off the bat with good, solid data. So that is all that I have for you today. I will stop sharing and just ask if there are any questions anyone has.
Hi, this is really good data. Will you be sharing your slide deck?
I will compile all the slides from today with the recording and send that out as soon as I get all the decks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Of course. Any other questions on the mapping project before we move on? Okay, then with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kylan Fisher, who's the Program Manager of Employer-Led Workforce Solutions at the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance, to talk about the Second Chance Hiring Cohort.
Thanks, April. So, hi, everyone. I am here to share about the Corporate Coalitions and CWFA's joint efforts to launch a cohort focused on second chance hiring. Just to give kind of some grounding on this topic, a lot of people don't realize almost 1 in 3 Americans have some kind of criminal record. Having a criminal record of any type, even if it is a single arrest that was later determined to not be valid, is still something that can create real barriers in individuals' lives, particularly in the places of workforce and getting hired and advancing in their careers. in a world where we live right now, where we have so many staffing shortages, where labor markets show us that there are more open jobs in the world than there are individuals looking, the idea that we are shutting off large chunks of the American population, in addition to just not being equitable hiring practices and having a lot of really big concerns on what just feels right, it also just is bad business practices. And so being able to look at this population, a population that when hired and given the proper supports is an amazing workforce, one that shows a lot of loyalty, a lot of determinedness, and has a lot of data shows creates really good workers moving forward. But it can be an area that's really difficult for companies, and particularly places like hospitals, to take on. There's a lot of fear, both perceived and actual. There's lots of concerns about, there's regulations we have to follow, and what if people worry that we're bringing unsafe people into this hospital or whatever it is. And so trying to crack this nut can be a really difficult and challenging process. And we think one of the best ways to tackle difficult processes like this is to do it with your peers, to do it in a collaborative way where you can really be honest with each other, confront the concerns, find what the solutions are, figure out what the real limitations are versus what the perceived limitations are. And so that is why we are launching in September a cohort of employers looking to tackle this issue. So the idea of this cohort is that in September, we're going to bring everyone together. What we really ask is that we need CEO level buy-in, because if this isn't something that the entire institution is on board with, it's not going to go anywhere. And then have kind of senior HR or someone else assigned who really has the authority to go across parts of the organization, because this is one of those issues where it's not just about one department doing it, but really understanding that, legal gets involved and HR gets involved and hiring managers are involved, and whatever the issue your organization is confronting, you really need to have the ability to go across different departments to look at these issues. So we're going to bring you all together, and then you all, if you join this cohort, will be the ones that really drive, like exploring your organizations, finding what your barriers are. What are the things, where are the places where if someone was going through the application process, where would they hit their roadblock? And what really diving into that. And we're going to bring you all the support of national experts, companies in the Chicagoland region specifically who have been doing this and doing it well. And also helping you find the right community partners who can help you with the sourcing and the wraparound supports and whatever else you need to make this happen. But it's really going to be about you all exploring your own needs, figuring out where your own barriers are, and then looking to your peers to have those conversations to find the best solutions for you. So it's not just going to be sitting in a series of lectures of us saying how to do this. It's really going to be you exploring it and figuring out what's best for your organization. That's pretty much all I have. Obviously, if you have any questions, I'm open right now, but you can also drop my email in the chat and anyone can feel able to reach out to me. As one other kind of a logistical note, we just brought on a new person at Corporate Coalition to be kind of the manager of this process and lead in. So you might also be hearing from her, since she might be reaching out to individuals. But also, if you are interested at all, email me. I can bring you into those conversations right now, because Anne is still just coming on and getting rolling on things.
Thank you, Kylan. And I have a short poll for the end of this meeting, and I've included a question as to whether, if anyone wants someone to reach out to them to learn more about the second chance hiring cohort. There's a question there about that. And of course, Kylan, as any literature applications come out, I'll share them with the whole group. Any questions for Kylan before we move on? Okay, well, personally, I'm just very excited about this opportunity. I know that CHWC had been focused on hiring justice-involved individuals in the past prior to COVID, and had done some work with Safer Foundation. So I know that this is important to this group of employers, and I really hope some of our hospitals join the cohort. Okay, now I'm going to pass it on to Dovid Sukanik. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Dovid.
That's perfect.
Oh, good. He's the project manager of the Bridge Initiative that I was speaking about. And Dovid, you should be able to share your screen.
Yes, I'll do that. First of all, thank you very much, April, for the invitation. Thank you all for this opportunity to come speak to you about this exciting program. Before I start, I just want to say that both what Ellen was talking about and what Kylan was talking about, it really resonated because there's so many overlapping things and components that we're all trying to work on in different ways. And it's exciting to see. Specifically, Ellen was talking about the data management, how critical that is. That's something we definitely feel and experience. And Kylan was talking about giving people a second chance when they might not have easily had one. Super important. And that's something that we think about a lot also. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so again, my name is David Sukenik, the project manager for the Bridge Initiative Chicago. So I want to talk a little bit about an overview of what we've been doing with this grant, and also, and maybe primarily, talk about lessons learned. Now, this is about a halfway mark or so. So this is lessons learned up until this point, but I think there's some interesting things that maybe we could all benefit from. Okay, so starting with the description and the mission of Bridge Initiative Chicago. And maybe some of you remember, I was actually on a meeting with you all about 6 months ago. And I talked about the initial stages and the ideas and what we were trying to do. And now that a lot of it has come together and solidified, so we could hopefully talk in more detail. So this is funded by a grant, the JP Morgan Chase Foundation. The initiative seeks to design, implement, and evaluate a 3-tiered workforce development solution to increase successful placement of new hires and support the advancement of incumbent workers throughout the healthcare sector. This grant is geared toward assisting minority and otherwise challenged populations find professional success in the healthcare field. And as we mentioned, the hospital systems engaged in this work are Advocate Aurora Health, Sinai Health, and University of Chicago Medicine. There's 3 components, or what we call tracks, excuse me, of this grant. The first one is Healthcare Forward, which is to increase general engagement from the population in the healthcare workforce at entry level. Evolve is to develop new technical skills and encourage progression to middle level roles. And Rise Higher is to promote career advancement and leadership skills among incumbents. So that's kind of the summary. And now I'd like to talk about each of these tracks in a little bit more detail. Again, I'm going to present some details of these tracks. This is really, the purpose is more to give you a context when we talk about the lessons learned. I can answer at the end of talking about the specific tracks. I can answer some questions if you'd like, but I'll also have the contact information from the leaders of each track, and they can go into greater depth and answer specific questions. Healthcare Forward is 6 hours of training. Now, usually that is broken up into 2 days, 3 hours each. Sometimes, depending on the host, if it's a public session, what we call just like general population coming in, signing up, versus one hosted by our community-based organizations, they might choose to have it a 1-day, 6-hour seminar. And some of the topics are covered. Why is healthcare a good field to work in? How do your skills align with the various, mostly non-medical jobs in healthcare? Becoming familiar with the 3 hospital systems, selecting the best job to apply for, and preparing for an interview. So as you can see, there's basically 3 types of information we're trying to give over. One is a general introduction to healthcare and telling them why it's a really good career to consider. And then talking about them, having them consider what are their skills and interests, where might they see themselves in the healthcare industry, and this not only includes skills and interests, but also their life circumstances. And the third is being specific about the 3 hospital systems, talking about Advocate, Sinai, and UCM. What the different cultures, differences, locations, that's very important, and types of jobs that they might have, so they could choose where they want to apply to. And that is the next step. And this is very important. Following the training, they submit an application for a guaranteed interview. This is a very big selling point, that they could decide that they want to, at least initially, apply to one of the healthcare systems, and they choose which type of job. Sometimes they could even choose a specific opening that they find on a website, and they say, I would like to interview for this. And they are guaranteed to get in front of a recruiter and have a discussion about their choice and see if they're appropriate, and hopefully move them forward. Throughout the application interview process, they are assisted and supported by our dedicated talent specialists. Now, this is something that we kind of brought on at after the launch, after the rollout, when we saw it's really important for us to be more proactive. At the beginning, we took maybe a more passive stance in terms of training them and then saying, okay, now you apply, and now here's what you do, and allowing them to move forward at their own pace. We've found very quickly after we hired this talent specialist just a couple weeks ago, that it's really an essential role. And this person is proactive and also responsive to any questions, and just really helping them navigate and answering the questions and preparing them for interviews and everything else that, especially at an entry level position, it's very important that they feel supported in that way. Our goal is to train 225 participants to hire 90 of them. So at least just at this point, we are pretty much at our goal of training the participants. The 90 hires, I would say, were lagging in terms of the pace that we had thought we would be at. And there's a lot of discussion and attention to things that we're doing and discussing how we could increase the hires. So that's definitely a work in progress, but in general, this track is on track. So we're very pleased about it. The next track is called Evolve, which is a 6-week, excuse me, or 10-week course. And the difference is that some cohorts are doing the entire 10-week course as it was originally formulated. Some are opting to do a more condensed version in order to move more people through for whatever reasons. The topics that are being covered: career interest and workplace skills assessment. Now, this assessment is actually a detailed skill and interest assessment, which is evaluated and discussed with all the participants so they can understand more about themselves. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, medical terminology, technology education through Microsoft. So as you could see, these are very technical things that a lot of the jobs that we're looking at for advancement are going to require or for sure appreciate. And some of these jobs, both medical and non-medical, they can advance to, and these are just a few of them: lab technician, respiratory therapist, community health worker, patient representative. So as you can see, these are middle-level jobs, very diverse in terms of the types of roles, also in terms of the types of next step trainings that they'll need in order to advance. But this is all part of it. It's getting them thinking about where they could see themselves next. Like the first track, graduates are guaranteed an interview for their selected advancement role. And our goal is to train 135 participants and for 80 of them to make a career advancement. Now, actually, I'm looking at what I wrote here. It's a little bit misleading. I think that the goal actually was to enroll a certain number, I think 135, maybe for 110 of them to complete, 80 of them to make a career advancement, but this is approximately what we're talking about. The definition for this purpose of career advancement is that they have to take a concrete step in terms of applying for a higher level position, or register for additional courses or certifications in order to get to that goal. So that is how we're defining success. If this program inspires them and gives them the skills and confidence to take that next step, then that's what we're looking for. The third track, called Rise Higher, is a 12-week course. and covers topics such as leading values and culture, motivating team members, performance management, change leadership, business acumen, and project management essentials. So this, obviously, you see a clear shift, much more high level information that we're looking to convey. But it's high level, but it's absolutely practical. It's not fluffy at all. We did, I think that, the people who put this together just did a great job. So very practical, and maybe the most tangible is this project management piece, because, as I wrote over here, the training culminates in each participant creating an executable project in healthcare. So they actually put these skills and this knowledge to work, and they create an idea. They take an idea and they say, this is what would be of benefit. These could be the steps in order to get there, and they flesh out a whole project management plan, which has been very exciting thing to see the success of. As I mentioned, also mentorship and group learning are essential aspects of this course. So different than the first two tracks, there's a big emphasis, and the way it's created is that it's very interactive, very collaborative, mentorship, and obviously the nature of moving people into a leadership role demands that. They have to interact with leaders. They have to talk to each other about these ideas and see how they would translate in their own minds and in those of their team members and cohort members. So that's a very important part. And our goal here is to train 70 participants, with 40 of them advancing toward leadership positions. Again, concrete steps, and some already, at least anecdotally, we haven't, the data is still coming in, but we've somehow already taken leadership positions even at this point, and that's very exciting to see. Okay, so I know that was a lot, and it was quick, but I'll take any questions. If I could help people understand something about these programs before we go on.
Thank you so much, David. And we do have some questions in the chat. I just wanted to mention to everyone, one of the reasons that I was excited for David to present the progress that's been made on this project is because it is a collaborative workforce development project similar to what we will be pursuing with the Good Jobs Challenge grant money. So I think this is a real opportunity to gather some learnings and some strengths and also challenges from this collaborative process of building workforce development pipelines together. So David, there are some questions in the chat.
Yeah, I could see them. I just pulled them up. I'm happy to address them if I can.
And then I'd also,
yeah.
Sorry, just after that, David, I'd also like to invite, I know Michelle and Betsy, I think, are on the call, who are leading this work from Advocate and from UChicago. If you want to chime in with anything that you feel is particularly things that have worked really well through this experience that you'd like to leverage as we move forward with planning Good Jobs Challenge pathway programs. But sorry, go ahead, David, with the questions in the chat.
Great. Okay, so does the talent specialist work with all 225 applicants? Do you provide supportive services that for the others that haven't advanced? Okay, so it sounds like the talent specialist is specifically for that first track, and yes, all what they have to do. So basically, at every stage, we are moving them through to the next one. So when they finish the training, they need to take the step of choosing a job and applying to through a special form that we have, identifying the interview that they want to have. If they're not being responsive, if they're slow to respond, the talent specialist will reach out to them, encourage them, offer help if they're a little reticent. So yeah, they do work with all the 225 applicants, specifically the ones that take the step of applying and are moving through the application process, because some of them do fall off, as you can imagine. But the ones who are interested and active, those are the ones who are going to get obviously the most work with. The supportive service of others that haven't advanced. So I assume, I don't know if you meant for that first track or for the or for the other ones, the ones who, in terms of that first track, you know, every effort is made in order to kind of meet them where they are and see what we could do for them. So I think the answer is yes. We want to help them, and sometimes if our program isn't necessarily the right one for them, you know, to refer them to something else, to a different you know, workforce organization, that's definitely a part of it. And for the other tracks as well, the other tracks actually are different in the sense that they're working with incumbents, so there's already a relationship with the current employees and moving them forward. And that relationship is ongoing. So whether it's going to be, you know, this specific program or other things within the organization, there's definitely attention given to that. How do people enter the first level? Great question. So really there's two ways. We have a website, we've been doing promotion, and people sign up and then they join just what we call a public cohort. And otherwise, and this is actually we're finding is a more effective way for several reasons in terms of you know, better engagement, is when the CBOs put together their own constituents into a cohort, and that way they basically say we have, you know, 10, 20 people that we want you to train, and then we train them that way. Yes, for all of them. Yes. Okay. Hopefully that answered the questions. Anything else?
Well, this is Betsy from UCM. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
So I just wanted to add a little bit. One of the reasons why we've been successful, it's not easy to have 3 different systems trying to create programs that align across our different landscapes, and also being able to work together to implement all 3 across the different systems. David's role as a project manager, as kind of our leader in all of this, has been really critical to keep us on track, to keep us aligned, keep us focused on moving forward with all the 3 different programs. So one of the lessons learned, I would say, was just having someone who can work across all 3 organizations in a dedicated role, and that project lead has been really helpful, and I think has enabled our success. So that's just a comment on the programs itself and the initiative. With Rise Higher, which is a program out of UCM, I think one of the things that I love about it is that it really is applicable as soon as, you know, they graduate from the program. We've already seen people promoted, and we intentionally made the program to be enrolled. You have to be nominated by a supervisor. So from the very beginning, it's the supervisor of that employee who's supporting them to go through those 12 weeks of training. So we don't have as many pushbacks or challenges with scheduling and participation, attendance. So that's been a huge kind of not even lesson learned, but just a approach that we took that has worked really well. And now that the first cohort has completed, we're well into the second cohort. These individuals are getting so much exposure to our senior leaders. And, you know, we know a lot of us have huge systems. You don't always get to have frontline interact with senior leadership. So this is a really great opportunity for them to get their names out there, to have a voice, and really be able to talk about their ideas with that project management component.
Thank you, Betsy, for that, and thank you for your for being such a great teammate. I want to thank Michelle also, and Audrey, I believe, is on this this call. Yeah, I mean, the collaborative, and we'll talk a little bit more about this soon, about the collaborative nature is really critical, and I think really you know, a positive thing in many ways. See, there was something else on the chat. Yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
And before we move on, I just wanted to, you know, open it up to the entire group. what are some things that are exciting or new about this, any of these three tracks, or all of them as a whole, that you are interested in seeing us replicate as we move forward with planning more pathway programs within CHWC? I'm just wondering from any sort of residents on what you think is just really great here. Dana, can I pick on you to start, since you say this is awesome?
I wasn't expecting to get put on the spot.
You don't have.
Excuse me. I need to think about it, because I was kind of put on the spot. I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, I'm sorry, Dana. Yeah. But anyone else, just what here?
Well,
Exciting.
just something that I was thinking about, and I apologize, the last person that was speaking from UCM, I like that it kind of makes it a competitive type of situation, and it weeds out those who really want it from the ones who are kind of coasting by. And so that's why I was asking, like, what does that support look like? What happens for the ones that are for the ones who don't advance? And that's not just for the one track, but for all of them, kind of what happens with them. But I think that that question was really answered when you talked about, you know, they have to be recommended by senior leadership. I think that that's really good. And I think that's something that we should, or that should be considered when you're looking into this type of programming, because having an opportunity to work with senior leadership is huge, especially when you may feel like you're so low down on the totem pole. Being able to work elbow in elbow with them, I think that that's great that they get a chance to recommend you. So that will be something that I think should kind of be duplicated. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dana. Does anybody else have any questions or any comments about these programs and what you would like to see us move forward to future pathway programs?
And April, it might be helpful when I go into the second part, talking about the lessons learned.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It might spark some
Yes.
additional ideas, because we're gonna talk more about these and like kind of what's worked and why.
Sorry, David, I didn't realize. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. There it is. Okay. All right. Here's lesson learned. So I broke them up into three areas, but as you'll see, they're kind of fluid, and you might conceive of them in different ways. So the way I'm thinking about them is planning for project and program success, and then the execution and change management, because there's always going to be changes. And then a couple takeaways, maybe specific takeaways that the Bridge Initiative has had, at least at our midpoint, as we're developing and as we're learning. Okay, so starting from the beginning, really the very first step is program choice and goal setting, and it's needless to say, it's critical to choose the right program and to really nail down exactly what you're trying to do and why, who's driving it, what type of resources are going to be needed, what are the goals, and what are the essential values, and what's the premise of this whole activity. Because what I'm describing is really a project charter, and I think that this is one. I'll bring up another one, but you know, there's a lot of like wonkiness in project management, and a lot of details, and some of it is exhaustive and just not not always practical. But the idea of a project charter is really just to nail down exactly what you're trying to do, document it, get sign off from everyone, And this is going to be the North Star. Like this is what is going to inform and keep you on track as you go through all the different twists and turns of the program. I'll give an example of this. Excuse me. In Healthcare Forward, when we were trying to figure out like how we could get more people hired, so one thing that we kept coming back to was a basic value that we're not going to lower the standards to hire for this program. So the idea of Healthcare Forward is to get people, in maybe, to the top of the list, get them their guaranteed interview, but they have to be qualified in every way. They have to pass screenings. They have to be appropriate skill-wise and education-wise. It's not to cut corners. And we had to keep coming back to that, just to as we would change and adjust, that would be something that we would keep in the front of our mind. Now, one example of something that we did change was originally we said that we're not going to need to change any of the processes in recruitment, talent acquisition within our system, within our partner systems. That turned out to be mostly true, but we did have to make some adjustments, and we're grateful that the partners were able to be and are able to be flexible, helping us move us towards that goal. So that was something that did have to change a little bit. But the idea of having values that you're not going to move from because those are essential to your mission, it's very important, and that's all part of program choice and goal setting. Connected to that is managing stakeholders, and the first step to managing stakeholders is identifying them. So I would say the other document, which is very important, is a stakeholder registry, and stakeholders are anyone that has any kind of impact or interest in the outcomes of this project or or how it progresses, is important to recognize. And they could be high-level management that have some kind of interest in where this is going to go. This has to do with all the people involved, external, stakeholders, and no matter how insignificant, and you make the list. And it could be 20 people. You could find it could be 50 people. But of those people, the step, an important step, is what level of interest do they have? How much do they have to be communicated with? And at which stage? What do they need to know? And what are their primary needs and motivations? And that's going to give you the confidence that as you move things forward, you're not going to overlook someone or something, and you'll be able to craft things and adjust things as you go with confidence. The third one about time. Now, this is one that's it was very interesting to me. It kind of surprised me because, typically you would say, well, how much time do we need to roll this out? So you lean towards having more, right? More time is better. More, we could consider things more. We could, all those great things that we wish we had enough time for. But there's a problem with too much time. And this was pointed out by one of our team members. Number one, there's a concern of a loss of momentum. And especially when you have a collaboration and you have a lot of different stakeholders and different priorities going on and all that, even if you have, great buy-in and great momentum at the beginning, as the months and even years go on, it's important to kind of be able to keep that inertia. And the more time you have, there is a risk of that waning. So that's something to keep in mind. And the other one is, and we'll talk more about, changes, but the risk of internal and external factors change is greater the more time you have. So whether it's going to be personnel or other factors, or I don't know, COVID, anything could happen, and it often does. So this is something which is important to keep in mind as well. Okay. The next one is execution and change management. So this is something that Betsy mentioned, the importance of centralized management and tools. I'm going to expand on this a little bit. it is important to have a project manager or someone like that. And the idea is someone has the bird's eye view, and their purpose is not just to be someone with the proverbial checklist that's saying, hey, do we do this? Are we on time? You know, emailing and making sure this is in and this is taken care of. Of course, that is important, and that's a lot of what needs to happen. But even more than that, to be strategic, to be proactive, to be communicative, these are all things which, again, like you mentioned, there's so many priorities and so many things, you know, pulling at the different partners and different stakeholders, to have someone who they are always keeping their eye on the ball. It's really essential. And then the other thing is the tools. And tools there's different types. There's project management tools. We use Monday.com, which I actually I suggest if you're looking for a project management tool, you should look into it. I find it very helpful. There's record keeping, document storage and sharing, all these types of things. It just makes life so much easier. It makes things so much more trackable, and it just increases the benefits so much more. So it makes things easier, but it also it makes the outcomes much more useful. If you're tracking, and this is what Ellen talked about originally, if you're tracking the progress and the advancements of your participants, and you have a way of doing it, you know, hopefully without too much friction or you know, or hassle, that's gold. You know, you come out with that kind of information, it has all sorts of applications, or you're tracking demographics, or you're you know, you're tracking, you know, results of the project. So all of those types of things, but I would put those into tools, because it's basically leveraging technology and processes in order to reach your goals. The next one is about change, and this is huge. Obviously, COVID was a change that could not have been anticipated. You know, kind of the flip side of change is risk. So you talk about risk management and project management, you know, you try to figure out what the likelihood of what types of risks and what kind of disruption, you know, will it cause. So usually, you know, pandemic is not high on the list. But when that happens, we have to know how to adapt to it. So I would say that maybe there's three types of changes that I would want to highlight. There's external, internal, and organic. So I think that external is hard to plan for. It could be hard to overcome because it's often out of your hands. Internal is like personnel changes or resource limitations that come up, and those could be navigated and even sometimes planned for or predicted. But it definitely it needs attention and constant evaluation. And then what I'll call organic is adjustments as you learn more. And this is something which I've been, you know, very pleased and impressed by our partners, that there's this attitude of constant improvement, and looking at it and saying, hey, is this working for us? And why not? And what can we do within the parameters of the time and the resources and the personnel that we have? And I think it's been just fantastic the way we've been able to be flexible and to adapt to new circumstances. So I'd like to give some examples of these different types of change. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it. So let's say the biggest one, COVID, right? So what happened? So this grant was supposed to be completed this past December. It was originally a 2-year grant. And then a few months into the planning, COVID hit, everything shut down. So the biggest change was the delay. Everything had to be put on hold. And it was needed. We had to file for an extension, which our grantor was very gracious about. So now we're going to go through the end of this year and even into the next quarter of the next year. Sometimes you're going to need more money. That wasn't the need for us. It was more about more time. And we were able to, within the time parameters, we're able to hopefully be able to produce the outcomes that we're looking for. Another very clear and tangible change was these were supposed to be in-person trainings, and they went virtual. There's differences, there's disadvantages sometimes advantages also of going virtual. But these are things that we had to be open to and ready to embrace, because that was just going to be, that was the facts. Maybe we're going to be able to shift some to in-person, and that would be nice and exciting. And I think that interaction is going to be important. But for the most part, the nature of it is it shifted. And then also, this was interesting about the changes to the workforce, to the attitudes of those who were trying to employ. What were their needs within COVID, post-COVID? What types of jobs are they looking for? What are their limitations? What are their opportunities? That's something which none of us could have predicted, the nature of the workforce and their needs would change, but it is. And I think in general, this is something I'm sure that you're all very sensitive to and working with, is how to meet the changing needs. In terms of internal, some examples. One of the 3 hospital systems had some leadership changes of our team. And that was, we had to kind of scramble at some point and make sure that the program, the track that was being developed by that hospital system, that they were able to plug in people to kind of pick it up where it was left off and make sure that it was back on track, and everyone did a great job. Another example was one of a different system, had a change in terms of their outsourcing, and certain entry-level jobs that were once within their purview were moved out of their purview. So once they at the beginning, they were being offered, let's say like food service or EVS, and now they're not being, because they're being hired by an outside vendor. And another example, once the programs were rolled out and the training was underway, it was clear that one of the vendors, one of the producers of the material, it was unsatisfactory and they fell short. And we had to change to someone else. And then again, it was kind of a little bit of a scramble, but they put it together and they had a solution. Moving on to this, what we called organic, just the natural development is when we mentioned before. This has been huge, bringing on this talent specialist. This was an example of, we thought that there would be a certain type of response, and it turns out there was a lot more support needed, and we were able to fill that need, and it's been a game changer. So that's something which has been huge. We didn't anticipate it, but we were able to bring that person on. We had the budget. We found a great person, and then hopefully it's going to continue to pay off for us. Another example is one of the Evolve cohorts was attracting, again, remember Evolve is the middle level, moving people to middle level roles, and they were attracting, one cohort was attracting leader focused people. Now that's great, but that's not what this track is for. So what they did was they tried to accommodate, they tried to provide some more enrichment, and they also realized they had to change the application a little bit, and to make sure that they were targeting the right type of people, and the people who were appropriate for this. Obviously, leadership is, and if they want to apply for leadership positions, we have Rise Higher, and they could be part of that. So those are all examples. Okay, and this last one here. So collaboration is rewarding and challenging. I think we all kind of know that. and we've gotten a big dose of that. It's very rewarding. We're all learning from each other. It's exciting. There were 3 hospital systems which are honestly competitors, and coming together is very exciting. We're bringing greater benefit. There's a lot of synergy. There's a lot of just the greater capacity is beneficial for the community, for the people we're serving, and for the hospitals that we're learning from each other. It's challenging. Clearly, there's different practices. There's different cultures. There's different, I would say, different global aims. We're all on the same page in terms of the needs and the benefits here, but maybe each system has like what they consider the higher priorities, and that's just going to happen, and we have to allow for that and work within that. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last one, which is specific takeaways. So I think I've identified 2 that are very prominent. There are many, and there's probably dozens. But these, I think, hopefully are going to be informative to you all as we all continue to create new projects to assist in workforce development. The first one is healthcare forward attracted experienced, educated participants. Now that's great, but it was unexpected. So what I mean by that is that when we formulated this program, we were thinking of a lot of entry-level positions, a lot of some were more menial labor, food service, EVS, patient transport, also some that needed different kinds of skills and people skills, technical skills. But we didn't know if many of them would have high school diplomas, and we were trying to figure out which jobs required it, which ones didn't require high school diplomas. As it turns out, is an interesting data point, of all our 220, well, at this point, 200 and some applicants, only 3 did not have a high school diploma. So this already told us that they're high school graduates, many are college graduates, many have experiences, whether in healthcare or other life experiences. And accordingly, some of the biggest preferences for jobs were the ones that were a little bit more advanced, a little more sophisticated, the ones that like patient representative or a community healthcare worker. So we're kind of adapting to that and making sure that there's enough opportunities. And this last one is the huge appetite for incumbent training. And actually, these are words of that Betsy said in her comments as to a lesson learned. And I just took it verbatim because I think it just really sums it up. And this is something, again, I'm sure all of you know and are working on, is that whether it is the Evolve program, which is moving people into middle roles, or the leadership training, moving people into higher roles, there's a big appetite. There's people want to advance, whether it's for salary reasons, they want to maximize their contributions, and that's something that clearly we all have the we could all give it the proper thought and attention to what we could do for our employees, to give them that support and encouragement and motivation to be able to take the next steps and to help them identify what those steps are, because sometimes it could be difficult, it could be scary, to try to throw your hat in the ring for something bigger than you've been working on, but clearly this is something which is needed and appreciated. I'll end off by just having this, and we'll be sending out these slides, but for more information about this, any questions about the management program, you can talk to me, John, Michelle, and Betsy, respectively, could be contacted about the Healthcare Forward, Evolve, and Rise Higher programs. They would love to be able to talk to you about it, to answer questions, and to help you all in your great work. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. I think that last slide in particular is a good segue to our discussion with Ben Winnick, who is the Chief of Staff at the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services, to talk about this Illinois Healthcare Workforce Initiative. Thank you so much again, David. I think these are all good learnings to bring to our future planning. But so Ben, without further ado, please take it away.
Okay. Thank you, April. Good morning, everyone. So just to open up the discussion, I think I will give a brief overview of what we're looking at and what was included in the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, and then really look to see how we can fit in with all the great work that's already being done to address the very significant workforce challenges that the healthcare industry is facing. So as part of the governor's introduced budget for FY23, there was approximately $180 million included in the budget for investments from us to help with the existing workforce challenges, knowing that there are really two significant pieces of that. One is really addressing the needs of the existing workforce and keeping people engaged and continuing to work in the field, as well as some longer term thinking that we all need to do collectively on kind of pathways into the workforce and expanding the workforce. The funding is coming from the risk corridors that had been put in place at the beginning of the pandemic with the managed care organizations to kind of protect the state's liability, depending on how utilization changed. And as many of you are likely aware, for the past almost year and a half, we've been providing, agency staffing to hospitals across the state just to make sure that as surges have, surge staffing has been needed as it relates to COVID, that we've, done what we can to make sure that at least some staff are in place. But that, gave us a keen sense of both what the labor market is looking at these days, as well as a tremendous appreciation for everything that you and your hospitals and systems are going through to really meet the challenges of the current labor market and ensuring that you're going to be able to continue providing high quality care going forward. So we do have $180 million in the upcoming fiscal year. Likely additional investments can be made in the following fiscal year, but I really just wanted to get connected to this group to really get feedback on where our investments can best be used while there's a lot of work ongoing to address longer term needs. So really, just looking to get feedback, I think, from you all to see what we can do to assist. Also recognizing we are looking at the healthcare field broadly, so not just hospitals, though we would expect hospitals to be the largest piece of any investments given the needs that are out there. But we also have significant challenges with, behavioral health providers and workforce, for some other groups as well. So I just wanted to join today, I guess, to give that broad overview and see if there's any initial feedback. I can put my email in the chat if people would prefer to just email me their thoughts, but if anyone would like to have the discussion now or ask questions or run ideas up the flagpole currently, just here to have a discussion. April, do you have anything to add?
No, we do have a few minutes, so take this opportunity to let Ben know, where would investments in the current healthcare workforce be most impactful? I think it was interesting that David was saying there's such an interest in professional development, in incumbent worker training pathways. And Ben, I think I'm correct that that's a potential area of investment, right?
It is.
Mhm. Does anyone want to jump in and give some feedback on that? Ben, when we spoke, I think you mentioned that you might want to focus this first year of investments on the existing workforce, perhaps moving in the second year to do some more pipeline work. Is that still?
Yeah,
accurate?
I mean, yeah, and I mean, I still think the greatest challenge that everyone is probably facing is, keeping the existing workforce in place and, and I, willing to look at that kind of broadly, both
Mhm.
in terms of, rewarding the workers that have really kind of, been put through hell for the last 2 years, say it quite frankly. But even, if anyone has ideas of people who may have left the field within, the last year or two, bringing them back in, I think is, a way to expand the workforce without going through those longer term pipeline challenges.
So what kind of investments will help us hang on to the current healthcare workforce?
As well as, I think, recognizing, one thing with our staffing program, we did require that 90% of the staff that we were bringing in come from out of state, because we didn't want to be competing with you all and trying to maintain staff. But I also, whatever investments we make, want to recognize that challenge as well, that not to pick on entities that are participating in this meeting, but, University of Chicago hiring staff away from Sinai, while may help the U of C, doesn't necessarily help our broader challenge.
April, to answer your question, I think in my thoughts, the investment that I think is needed is in education. It's, we know that the labor market shortage is critical throughout a lot of industries, particularly healthcare. We need to drive our community members towards these healthcare careers that we have in-demand jobs for. And we know the appetite is high. And one of the things that we've recognized through the Bridge Initiative program is when we have these public-facing programs, or even our internal ones, we receive hundreds of applications, and that high volume is just indicative of the interests of those that wish to advance their career, that want to go back to school but don't have the means to do so on their own. Hundreds of applications to the Evolve program. All individuals that are currently employed that want to get out of a career that doesn't have a lot of opportunity for growth. They're looking to advance, but they can't afford to go back to school. So to be able to remove that barrier, that cost barrier, to receive additional certification, degrees, to advance, or even enter the healthcare space is incredibly important. And just at a time when us as the employers were making investments in those kind of programs, the pandemic hit. And now we're all facing extreme financial constraints, and we're having to choose between, continuing to invest in workforce development programming or, patient care. And obviously patient care is always going to come out as a priority. So as much as we understand the value behind it and the return on investment, I think employers are now struggling to continue with those investments, and I think we need help.
So thank you, Betsy. So of the hundreds of applications that you receive, about what, and if this, I had to step away for another meeting, so I apologize if I missed it. But of the hundreds of applications that you're receiving for the Evolve program, about what percentage are you able to actually accept?
I mean, it's very, for example, we have a program where we hire from the South Side community members. We put them through the BNA program at Malcolm X, and they become certified as a basic nurse assistant, and then we hire them as an NSA. The first rounds of interviews, we receive, over 100 applicants, and we have 7 people in the cohort. So it's very small numbers. With the Evolve program, which is an internal program, I think the first time that we put out a call for enrollment, we had 200 interested employees, and we were able to accept 5. So, I mean, it's just, there are small groups of cohorts, but there's a lot of interest.
And then so part of it, I assume, so I want to make sure I understand, I guess, for lack of a better term, bottleneck is for both programs. Is it simply how many people can be funded with those programs, or are there any capacity issues in terms of, educators?
Yeah, I
Any
think it's
constraints on that side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the educator front too, I'm happy to go into some more detail with you offline, Ben, but from the school's perspective, I know that they're struggling with providing additional instructors for being able to host larger cohorts on our clinical sites. So it is from a clinical faculty perspective, I think that's one of the challenges. But it's also just us being able to fund people through the program and make sure they have the adequate resources to be successful and to complete the program and not fall off.
It looks like Leslie has his hand up. Go ahead, Leslie.
Yes. I wanted to say a couple of things. One, I want to say thanking the group for having all the individuals that are presented today, including Ben, from the state, and want to say thank you to the state as a hospital, safety net hospital, for the support with the RNs, during the pandemic and the crisis. But the other thing I would like to say is, I'm not sure how the funds will be invested, but hospitals like mine would still like to have access to the outside nursing pools that you've created during the pandemic is available, and trying to recognize, as you said, and reward those who stayed, is if there were stipends or something that came to those institutions in order to help supplement the operational funds to be able to pay nurses a little better when you're like we are, because we're behind the curve when you compete with the Mount Sinai's, University of Chicago, the Northwesterns, the Advocates. But I want to say thank you for working with the governor to get additional funds. Don't know how it's going to help us, but we hope that it can filter down into organizations like this and ours.
Okay. Okay. So Leslie, for South Shore and some of your other, I assume this would apply to, St. Bernard, Jackson Park, looking for assistance so that you can just kind of compete in the labor market with some of those larger institutions. Is that kind of what you're?
That is part of what I'm saying. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. And Ben, I will not take any more of anyone else's time, because hospitals like mine is part of the group. We're unique, but not unique, and probably offline is to email, text to try to connect in a different way. But just wanted to say, in the larger sense, thank you for all that you guys have tried to do and what you're trying to do. That was my ultimate go with speaking.
Thank you,
Hope
Leslie.
that some of the money trickles through to my
Yeah.
poor hurt here.
Well, we just have a few minutes left, so thank you so much, Ben, for coming and speaking about this. I've put a survey in the chat that does ask just an open-ended question. If you have any thoughts on where these investments should go, you can share them in that survey, and I'll share them with Ben. And Ben, feel free to keep me in the loop. And if you want some more feedback from this group, I'd be happy to help arrange that. Before we hop off, does anyone have any announcements they want to share?
I do. Thanks, April. This is Tamar from Upwardly Global. I want to just make a quick shout out. This has been a great meeting. We work with immigrants and refugees. I specifically in the healthcare field. The state of Illinois now has an interesting, important opportunity where doctors, internationally trained doctors who have passed all the United States medical licensing exams have the opportunity now to work in the state under a licensed doctor. And we're working really hard. Upwardly Global has created a working group of hospital folks and ethnic medical societies, some public health folks, to try to get people employed under this opportunity. And there will also be a task force at the state level looking at long-term opportunities for internationally trained medical doctors and other folks. If anyone is interested in learning more, I'm going to put my email in the chat. April can also connect you directly to us. Really exciting. We have about 8 folks who are currently working under this opportunity. It will last as long as the COVID emergency lasts in the state, and excited to see where we can help use amazing immigrants and refugees who come to the US with training, with experience to support the vast needs in healthcare that we're talking about today.
Yes, thanks, Tamar. And anyone can reach out to me. I'm also helping specifically with that. And I think we're going to plan an employer information session sometime in July. So I will share that date with you. I know it's 10. Does anyone else have anything else that they want to share with the group in our final moments? Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate you making the time to be here this morning. I know everyone is super busy this summer. Please take a moment to fill out that survey. Feel free to reach out to me about anything you heard today or anything in general. And I will send out the recording and slides shortly. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.